started literally just on pen and paper breaking down the math because I was like, wait a minute, we're not necessarily treating 1,000 square feet, for every single home, right? So in today's episode on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the chemical label of Lambda 9.7 CS. This chemical is very similar, almost identical, as a matter of fact, to more popular chemicals like seismic CS, as well as demand CS, one of the more common ones used amongst the larger pest control companies. And for those of you who may be actually listening to the podcast, this may be an episode you may want to cross-reference with YouTube. I'll try to make sure that a link to this specific video will be in the show notes for those of you that listen to the podcast more than watch it, because we're going to be breaking down the chemical label specifically of this chemical, because of course around the start of the year I always like to take a look at our overall business costs. For those of you that don't know who I am, of course my name is Griffin Thomas. I own a pest control company myself, Preferred Pest Management, in the Dallas, Texas area. We've been in business now going on 4 years. On this channel overall, I just document my overall journey and just try to bring you guys just things I think may help you guys. We talk about various subjects from, the chemicals, where we get products, to, running Google ads and managing our money, investing our money, things of that nature. Like I said, just documenting my overall journey. So if any of that kind of sparks your interest, feel free to subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that good stuff. For those of you on YouTube specifically, that way you won't miss any future videos and live streams. We go live about once a week, roughly. I try to schedule those, that way you guys know ahead of time, and you can also ask questions for those. Those are strictly Q&A specifically, just for you guys, for any questions you may have about, starting or growing a pest control business. But like I said, around the beginning of the year, we like to sit down, take a look at all of our costs for the business, see where maybe we can save a little bit of money, maybe we need to invest a little bit of money in one area, whatever the case may be. We like to just sit down, usually within the first 90 days of the new year, and just take a look at everything, see if any labels have changed, things of that nature. And I was going over the chemical label specifically for Lambda 9.7 CS, which is kind of our golden standard for just general maintenance treatments when customers don't have a lot of issues going on. There are monthly, quarterly, bi-monthly customers. We get to a point where we're more so just maintaining the activity level, then we will go ahead usually switch to Lambda 9.7 CS. Now, of course, ideally, at least once a year, we will switch the chemical. It could be something as cheap, quote unquote, as like biphenyl T, very rare, but occasionally we may use that. We may use temperate FX. We may use Onslaught Fast Cap. It just depends on, if any specific issue may pop up, then we'll go ahead and alternate the chemical there for maybe 1 or 2 treatments, because of course we don't want any, chemical resistance buildup in terms of just using that same product, of course, just repetitively over and over and over again. With that, we'll just kind of get right into the nuts and bolts, the overall math. Like I said, if you're listening on podcasts, we have this on YouTube specifically where you can take a look at the label, or if you happen to have a Lambda 9.7 CS label, or probably realistically even a seismic CS, or even maybe a demand CS label, you can probably follow along with us. They should have virtually the same exact statistics on them, as like I said, they're virtually the same chemical. And the thing is I really started diving into, all these different numbers in terms of, all their numbers are based on 1,000 square feet, 800 to 1,600 square feet, things of that nature. And I started literally just on pen and paper breaking down the math, because I was like, wait a minute, we're not necessarily treating 1,000 square feet, for every single home, right? So what I did was I factored in, okay, how far do we go up the foundation? How far do we come out? In all honesty, we usually go up about a foot. Of course, we can go up 3 feet, and, we'll even hit, windowsills from the outside and things of that nature. But generally speaking, for our perimeter treatment, we'll go up about a foot or so, and then we go out about 2 feet, sometimes 3 at the most. But generally speaking, you're talking about roughly a 3-foot wide path, right, in terms of your chemical treatment. Then from there, when we're calculating, our treatment area, the only other thing is your linear footage around the foundation of the home, right? So knowing this, I just used a random number. I used 200 linear feet because I wanted to kind of overestimate these numbers. So I factored in 200 linear feet times our 3 feet for, like I said, our up 1 foot, out 2 foot roughly. And again, you can use whatever numbers that you are using as either a technician, business owner, whatever the case may be. And we just multiplied the 3 feet times 200 feet, and that gave us 660 feet of, total treatment. Now, of course, when it comes to these numbers, the only way you're going to truly know this is if you roll out the linear footage of every home you're treating. Are you doing that? No. But that's why I wanted to ultimately run these numbers just based on kind of our, I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but 200 linear feet for a home. Those of you that have done a termite treatment or two know that 200 linear feet homes, those are generally considerably good sized homes. Most homes that I run into in my area are usually about 125 to 190 linear feet. So 200 linear feet, like we're kind of going above and beyond with these estimations to a certain degree. Not crazy, but not light by any means. So knowing this, I went ahead and pulled out the calculator. I always like to use what they like to call on the labels as the mid rate. So what I did is I went ahead and used the numbers here based on 2 gallons for every 1,000 square feet in terms of our application volume gallons of solution. Of course, the rates that they give us are 0.2 fluid ounces per gallon, 0.4 fluid ounces, and then, or not per gallon, sorry about that, per 1,000 square feet, and 0.4 and then 0.8, which is of course like your clean out rate. And then they give you this hypothetical of, okay, if you're using 5 gallons, or if you're using 10 gallons, or mixing, I should say, mixing 50 gallons, then this is the amount. It's kind of like a little cheat sheet essentially, and then from there you can just work out the math based on your situation. The reason I decided to do this was because we like to use the mid rate. We notice anytime we go below mid rate, we tend to have some issues. In all honesty, sometimes we'll even go ahead and go up to the true clean out rates, just because if you have a problem house, you got to do what you got to do. At the end of the day, every situation is different. But again, we're talking about more so calculating our costs for general maintenance homes that we can go ahead and fill the rig up with this amount and just put it in our backpack, because we know how many gallons we're going to use with the backpack. Obviously with the rig, sometimes, if your pressure is a little bit higher than usual, whatever the case may be, you can end up using a little less, a little more. So we like to use the backpack sprayers, of course, because we have that kind of dialed in. And the 2 gallons worked out perfectly for us, because generally speaking, we use right around 2 gallons per house. There may be some homes that we're going to use 1.5 gallons that are a lot smaller. There may be some homes that we will go ahead and use a full 4 gallons. If I were to put an average on it, I would say 2.5 is probably the average. So using their 2 gallon example here works out perfectly. Now, this is where the math can get a little tricky, of course. Now, again, this math is based on 1,000 square feet, right? And like I said, in our example here, our math is more so based off of 660 square feet. So what do we need to do here? Well, if we know that we're going to plan on going with the 0.4 fluid ounce method, then instead of going based off of their calculation for 1,000 square feet, we're just going to multiply that times 0.66. Because of course, 660 feet equals pretty much right at 66% of 1,000 square feet. So instead of putting, say, 1 fluid ounce in, for every 5 gallons of water, you only need to actually be putting in about 0.66, about 2/3 of an ounce per every 5 gallons that you're going to mix. And then of course they gave you this key here. So I mean, the same goes, say you have a 50-gallon rig, we have a 30-gallon rig. So let's say we're going to roll with that method of 0.66 ounces per gallon, and we have a 35-gallon rig. That's going to give us pretty much right at 23 and a half ounces of chemical that we would need to put in our chemical tank. And again, the reason being because, what we're saying here is we're treating an average of 660 square feet, not 1,000 square feet. So instead of, 10 fluid ounces for 50 gallons, we would actually only need about 6.6, 6.5, 6.5 to 6 3/4 of an ounce per, 50-gallon fill up. And that just makes me realize I actually did my math wrong. So I was doing that per gallon when actually this is for every 5 gallons, the 0.66 that we're referring to. So instead, my math would actually be 0.66 times 7, because of course, like I said, I have a 35-gallon rig. This math here that we're doing is based on a 5-gallon fill up. So we would only need about 4 4 2/3 essentially ounces in our 35-gallon tank, which is crazy whenever you think about. I know whenever I was a technician and even first started, running my route, the only thing that I looked at when it came to mixing these chemicals is, okay, what is the standard, right? What is the minimum that I can use? What is the maximum that I can use per gallon, right? And I just went to work. So, I was pretty much being lazy, right? Like I pretty much stopped right here. I saw, okay, this says for every 1 to 5 gallons of water, I can put 0.2, 0.4, 0.8, boom, went to work. So what I did was, I would put say 0.2 ounces in my B&G. I would put 0.8 ounces in my backpack per gallon. And you can probably tell where I'm going with this. Yeah, we were wasting a lot of chemical at the end of the day, because as this sheet breaks down in terms of this key that they gave us, we are really, 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 really overusing our product in terms of what we need to be using. Because instead of using, obviously, 0.8 fluid ounces per gallon, say you fill that up in your backpack, that's 3.2 ounces per backpack fill up, where the math we just broke down shows that we only need about 4.5 to 5 ounces for our entire sprayer, a 35-gallon sprayer. Now, obviously, you'll want to kind of work out this math more precisely. Again, I kind of wanted to overshoot it just a hair. You guys know the size of your homes at the end of the day that you're treating, at least a ballpark. So obviously, if you're treating a home that is smaller, then of course you're going to be putting down less chemical, and that is where you adjust obviously how much chemical is actually coming out of your backpack. Instead of having your if you use a flow zone like us, instead of having your flow zone turned up to say level 3, level 5, those higher levels, you may have that dialed down to level 1, maybe level 2 at the most. That way you're putting down less chemical, because of course a home that is say 200 linear feet is going to get twice as much as the home that gets a 125 linear feet, right? Because obviously the more linear foot, that means the more square footage that you're going to be treating. So of course, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the only way to really know how much to a T you should be putting down is if you were to actually take your measuring wheel and wheel out the linear footage of every home you treat. I do not suggest that. I don't think it's necessarily that serious at the end of the day, because as long as you're staying within, kind of these two bottom keys, if anything, you're going to be risking under applying chemical. Where you start kind of flirting with over applying chemical is whenever you're doing these 1 gallon mix rates. And like we mentioned, you're just going with straight up 0.2 per gallon, 0.4 per gallon, 0.8 per gallon. Like, sure, you can technically do that, but like we said, you're actually over applying, you're wasting chemical, and you're driving up the cost of your treatments big time. Just to give you a little bit of perspective here, we actually did a video about this a while back, I want to say about 6 to 12 months ago now, about just how much it costs to treat a home. And just to give you guys an idea, I worked out the math based on what we were just going over, and mixing at the proper rates that we should be mixing at, again, more so for maintenance rates and things of that nature. Obviously this adjusts based on, is there an issue with spiders, is there an issue with crickets, like whatever the case may be. Obviously you're going to increase, but of course you can always have what's mixed in your rig as your kind of the standard, like we said, maintenance. And then that's the beauty of that, is you fill up your backpack, say you're at a trouble home, you can go ahead and add another 0.2 or 0.4 ounces. You can always add more, but you don't want to be mixed at clean out whenever it's just not really necessary at the end of the day. So like I said, back to the math, you're looking at only about 27 cents per gallon whenever you're mixed at the proper rate. Just to give you guys some perspective here, let's say you're doing the 0.4 ounces per gallon. So there's 32 ounces in each bottle. If you divide that by 0.4, that gives you, 80 ounces of chemical, or not 80 ounces, 80 gallons of actually mixed product that you're going to get, which doesn't sound bad or anything, right? Because, it's not even 1 ounce per gallon, like some other chemicals like Onslaught Fast Cap, which again, this goes for practically every label. Onslaught Fast Cap, what's some other ones we use? Tempered FX, Bifin IT, regardless of what chemical you're using, these keys are all on these labels, and it's just a matter of taking the time to sit down and read them and do the math, and then you realize, wow, I am really over applying product. And let's be real, guys. I mean, over applying product it doesn't really give you any better result at the end of the day. As long as you're mixing a good proper amount to do a good treatment, you're not going to notice any difference between doing that versus, over applying, because the whole idea is, obviously as business owners, we need to be mindful of costs. And another thing is mindful of the environment. Like, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're not damaging the environment. These chemicals, while they have improved vastly over the last few decades, you still don't want to be over applying and just adding unnecessary chemicals to the environment when you can literally be achieving the same results with, I mean, we're talking what, like a fifth or less of the product. So, it's a win-win all around. It's a win for, your pocketbook as the business owner. It's a win for our environment, and it's still a win for the customer because you're still taking care of their problems at the end of the day. But back to the math here. So we're talking, like we said, 80 gallons of full mixed product. Price right now, depending on where you get it, obviously if you get it from one of these more expensive places online, you're talking roughly $80. I tend to get it for right around $69, $72 from my supplier. So that's the math we're going to use. We're going to just say $72 for now. So what we would do is we just take our 80 divided by 72. Actually, I just realized I did that math wrong. You take your price divided by your total gallons that you're going to get out of it, and that comes out to 90 cents per gallon. So you're talking about literally a 3 to 4x rate in terms of how much more you are spending. So let's just say, for example, because at the mix rate that we're talking about here, you get 256 gallons of mixed chemical. So let's just do a price, comparison. Let's say we went ahead and did 256 gallons at that rate. That's going to end up costing us $230.40. Okay. Now let's do 256 times just 27 cents. That's going to come out to $69.12. So you're talking literally almost a $200 savings over that same amount. Let's just take a look at it this way. 90 cents, you subtract your 27 cents from that. That's a 63-cent per gallon of mixed chemical, not gallon of the chemical, gallon of mixed chemical that you're applying. This is what your savings is per gallon per treatment. So let's say we use an average of, we'll just say 2.5 gallons per treatment, because I would say that's about the average, 2.5, maybe even 3, but we'll just stick with 2.5 gallons. So you're saving almost $1.58 per treatment. Let's say you're doing, we'll just say 200 regs per month. That's $315 a month in savings. You do that over 12 months, that's almost $3,800 a year of saving for your business. So, and like I said, you can do this math on every single chemical, obviously. There's a few exceptions. I think maybe Taurus SC is pretty much standard. Like, you're using, what is it, like 0.4 ounces or 0.6. I forget the exact numbers, but that's just a straight up rate per gallon. And I'm sure there's probably a couple others as well. But like I said, I just kind of wanted to bring this information to you guys. I'm sure there may be some of you guys that already knew this, of course. It's just, I never really, that's one thing I will say I've been bad about, is I don't really take the time to sit down and just read, the entire label. And I probably, could, in all honesty, read this label a couple of more times just to get even that much more out of it. Not even necessarily from the cost saving side of it, but just making sure that, I'm sure there's different situations that even this label calls for that, because you're talking roughly 9 to 12 different types of ways you can go about mixing this product at the end of the day. So I'm sure that, there's different situations where, you may be best to use the mix rate of 0.8 fluid ounces over 5 gallons versus using 0.8 fluid ounces per gallon over 1,000 square feet, right? So, yeah, I mean, my whole point here is definitely, I think one of you all even mentioned it in the comments recently on either a video or a short that I posted on YouTube, which was, always go to the label for information. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, yeah, nerd, we know, blah, 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 blah. But really, guys, I mean, just especially for those of you that are looking to start a business, start a pest control business, or you already have a pest control business and you're looking to, grow your business. Part of growing your business is going and doing cost analysis. Because what was the math we ran there? $315. Let's say you have 5 technicians who are running 200 regs a month, and I use 200 regs a month because that's roughly 10 regs a day, which I know a lot of companies kind of cap their techs at. I know some of you are ruthless and will have them do 20. Do the math for whatever your situation may be. But let's say, we said right at pretty much $3,800 a year. Let's say you have 5 technicians. That's literally almost $19,000 a year that you could be saving by just simply reading the label at the end of the day. Divide that over 12 months. That's almost $1,600 a month. What could you be doing with $1,600 a month for your business? That's some good advertising money right there. That's about $400 a week that could be going towards advertising. $400 a week going towards advertising. That's what, about $100 a day. That's some good Google Ads money right there. So, or maybe if you want to dip in some other markets, like we said, $1,600 a month. That's not nothing to squawk at. And even if you're just a solo operator, $315 a month. Maybe you're not doing any advertising right now. What could you do with $315 a month? Maybe, that $315 a month, you could go buy another truck to go ahead and get somebody hired. Maybe you could go ahead and, like we said, even just put that money into advertising. Sure, $315, you're probably only going to get maybe 1 or 2 customers out of it, but hey, compound effect, right? 1 to 2 customers extra a month over a year, that's another 20, 25 customers added to your route. And, that's just one little aspect of it, a way you can look at this math at the end of the day. So, as always, I hope you guys did gain some valuable information from this. If you have any, insights or anything for us as well, do not hesitate to drop a comment on YouTube down below in the comments section there. And if you have any questions or need any clarification or anything, or you have a chemical that you want me to kind of break some math down for you, I can do either a short or maybe even a video, kind of a detailed video like this in terms of how me back in the day would have mixed this product versus how me, after actually taking the time to read the label top to bottom, would mix this today, and how much money it could save you and your pest control business in the future. As always, my name is Griffin Thomas. I appreciate you guys tuning in, be it on the podcast, on YouTube. If you're new on the podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you may be listening, do us a favor, share the show with somebody. Go ahead and give us a rating. I saw we only have like 1 or 2 ratings on Spotify. We got like 5 or something like that on Apple Podcasts last I seen. Do me a favor and get those up. That's the only way the podcast will get exposed to other people. And same for you guys on YouTube. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up so YouTube will share the love, share the information with other fellow pest control operators. That way, we can all save some money. And like we said, maybe even save the environment along the way. And if you're not already subscribed and following on the podcast, go ahead and do so. All links are in my description box in my LinkTree. You can join totally free Discord group chat. There's over 300 of us in there now. You can join that in the LinkTree. There's also a Facebook group with well over 100 members in there. That community is growing day by day as well. And of course, if you guys need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one.